right, we are back. So this is going to probably be a really heavy episode. This is for any of you that might feel like you're just stuck between a rock and a hard place. When you're in that position of you really do believe something is happening. Maybe you even know that it is, and you feel like you're stuck. You feel like, there's no one you can turn to. Maybe you feel stuck financially. You don't have friends or supports in your life. And you might even feel stuck because you've felt this way for a really long time. And you're wondering, okay, well, now I'm going to do something about it. When you're in that place, I think that it's easy to feel attacked maybe by some of the things that we say on the podcast or the YouTube channel. And I want you all to know that we do not mean that at all. You are not being judged. This is meant to be motivating and eye-opening. But sometimes when we hear something that strikes a chord, we respond with defensiveness because in our hearts, we know that that's truth. So we wanted to address some of, questions from some of our clients, the pain that they've shared with us and how they feel, and see if we can kind of break free from some of this stuck feeling that you might all be having. So, Dr. Trish, you have had some questions come across your table. Which question sits with you the heaviest, and where do we want to start?
Well, I thank you for starting that way, because I wanted to start exactly how you did, to be honest, is that, I know this is probably the most difficult journey that many women will take. And unfortunately, more and more in this, in our society, it's the most difficult journey that you can take. The person that you thought was your partner in crime, your best friend, the person who has your back and is always going to be there for you, you find out that they're doing this thing, whatever that thing may be, that is against you or seemingly against you, and I'll break that down. But this is the most difficult journey and you feel stuck in it. You have families, you have friends, you have communities, and you don't want to admit to yourself this thing's going on. Never mind admit to the world. So the number one thing I wanted to say is, I know that this is likely the most difficult thing you will go through. And that is why we are spending our valuable time coming here to give you this free content, because we don't want you to stay in the place that you're in for 1 second longer. But unfortunately, that means we have to tell you the things you don't want to hear, because it's so hard, man. And you have to, I feel like it's my responsibility, whether you like what I say or not, to tell you, you have control in this situation. There's many things you can do. Yes, it's going to rock your boat. Yes, it feels like it's going to sink your boat. It's not going to. Your boat's going to change, but you are going to make it to the other side of this thing probably better than ever if you can engage with the process.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This just came to me. A client said that they're afraid of healing. They're not even sure right now what they need to heal from. We haven't really gotten there, but they're afraid of healing because it might mean that their relationship won't work out. So I was like,
Totally.
whoa, hang on. Healing, that's restoring your heart, your life. If your relationship does not work out because of that, you still win. You still come out on top because you're healed.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So I know I had literally the same conversation with someone the other day that, it is scary because it will change. It's going to change. And you know what? Your relationship might not work out, but it doesn't have to mean your relationship ends. It means your relationship changes. And change is really hard for people. So that's the first thing that I want to say. There has to be change, because if you keep doing the same thing you've been doing for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, decades, you will not get a new outcome. Change is hard, but you have to get ready for change. And I know that's hard to hear, but that's what this journey's about, and you can be better. Mm-hmm. And, I don't want people to feel judged when I'm talking about codependency, when I'm talking about attachment theory, which we've talked a little about, when I'm talking about all these factors that do, in fact, run under the surface of pornography addiction or sexual acting out. It takes two to tango. And yes, one might be leading the tango, but the other person is involved in the tango, and it's not your fault. So I need to say that loud and clear. We've said that before. This is not your fault, but this situation on your side of the street is, in fact, your responsibility to do what you need to do for you. And we've highlighted this before. If you do what you need to do for you, it's the greatest chance that you have for also healing your relationship. And we're going to talk specifically again what that is, but I don't want you to feel judged when I'm kind of calling you out on some stuff that might be going on in your life, in your relationship. It is to bring it out of the dark and to shed the light on it so you can look at it. And yes, it can be painful to look at it. I know that from the bottom of my heart. It's very painful to look at it. That's why we encourage everybody who listens to this podcast, get a journal, start writing this stuff down, because you'll be surprised in a month, 2, 3, the things that you wrote then that you couldn't see. You couldn't see them before. This journey is about improving your emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. Self-awareness is the first step in that. The second, self-regulation, being able to make good choices for yourself. The third is social awareness, which allows you to see what your partner's got going on and what you've got going on dynamically. And the fourth is relationship management. And that is what we are here to help you improve.
Great. So let's kind of address some of the practical reasons somebody might feel stuck. One of the main things that comes across to me is this financial obligation that they have, like that a lot of the times, and we know this, if your partner is engaging in pornography or any type of sexual acts outside the marriage, inadvertently, they do start to isolate you because they're afraid of you finding out their secret. So, of course, they don't want you blabbing to friends and, all around town and talking to everybody. You're going to find out their secret. They don't want you in their stuff. So, over the years, when those things are happening, I don't know that it's malicious intent. It's a way to protect their secret, but you really truly might start to feel isolated where you don't have friends, you don't have control of the money. If you did, you might see where that money is being spent, right? So we have some practical tips to share, some stages or steps that you can take to get out of this. But I want people to know we get why you might feel that way, and it's on purpose.
Yeah,
right?
and part of the solution, that is the problem. That's part of the problem, which means it's part of the solution. So, before we go on about that, I want you to realize that every time that we point out part of the problem, it is within your control to make it part of the solution. You have control in this. You feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. And you are stuck there until you realize, I can move this rock. I can adios this hard place. I have so many choices to move forward. And in our digital program, and honestly, I forget because I recorded a while ago, I think it's 5 options. And I'm just going to highlight 3 of them, but there's many options in this journey. And one of the options is to stay stuck between the rock and the hard place and just stay in the situation and never change anything and become resentful and never have sex with your partner, and your partner does his thing, and you just sit there being mad and not doing anything about it and not telling anybody about it.
And
isolated.
And also then crumbling medically, because all of that is going to come out. You're going to have high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, ulcers. Nothing good is going to come out of that, but that's your choice to stay.
It is the choice. So you can choose. Another choice is to do the hard thing, approach and engage and do the things, do the work to make your relationship better. You can choose to leave. You can choose to leave well. You can choose to leave poorly. There's lots of choices in this. So if you are stuck between the rock and the hard place and you have not been able to get out, I'm sorry to tell you, it's a choice. There's other choices in here. But I want you to know that because there's tons of control. So going back to the isolating just for a second is that's why I like to characterize these sexual acting out behaviors, or definitely pornography addiction, as the hijacker, because your man's brain has been hijacked. He doesn't want to hurt you. He is your partner in crime in there. Most people, the 99% of men, they're the good man that you fell in love with. Their brain's been hijacked by sexual behaviors for self-soothing. It makes them feel secure and safe. They need to feel other ways to feel safe and secure. They're doing it to themselves. You are collateral damage. They are not doing it to you. And I think if you can have that framework shift and go, you know what? This addiction's doing this to my husband, then you can feel better about like gaining the strength that you need to, because it's not you against him, it's you against the hijacker. And what you're trying to do at the outset of this journey, whenever you choose to take the step, is to get your man to see that their brain's been hijacked. I work with thousands of men who go through this transition of, oh my gosh, I didn't even know my brain was hijacked. Now I know it's hijacked, and it's still really hard for me to get control back. They take their journey and they get the control back. So like when you take these action steps that I'm about to give you, the practical action steps, you're doing it for you and for him to get your partner in crime back. And so when you take these action steps, you come out of isolation. So that alone is better. You gain some financial control for yourself. And we'll just start there before I go on to too many things. So the first thing is approaching and saying, I know you have a problem with this. I love you. It doesn't have to be with hatred. It doesn't have to be with emotional drama. It should not come with threats. Boundaries are not threats, and we're going to dig into that. But you approach and say, I'm not living in this anymore. I'm not staying stuck between the rock and the hard place. I'm going to take some actions for myself. I have to gain confidence, clarity, so I can move forward. The first thing you should do is get a job if you don't have one. Earn your own money. And if you can do it in a way that you like, that is obviously the best thing that you can do. But even if you just start earning money somewhere that you feel like you have to, it's going to change your framework. You're going to feel more self-reliant. This whole thing is about becoming self-reliant and becoming confident so that you can get to a quote unquote rock bottom place, hopefully without getting to rock bottom, but getting to a place where you go, I'm going to be just fine. If this relationship doesn't work out and it changes, I am going to be better than fine. I'm going to figure out how to make enough money so I can get my own apartment. When it comes to financial aspect, if your husband is the breadwinner, and if you're in a relationship, if you got divorced, you would end up getting some settlement for that. And if you have to do that, that's one of your options. But you know what you can do in the meantime? You can go to your husband and set a boundary. You can say, babe, we have a problem. I'm no longer staying in this toxic dynamic of a relationship. I'm going to need you to transfer X amount of money each week at 8 a.m. into this new bank account that I set up in just my name. I'm going to need you to transfer $500 a week. If your husband has lots of money, I'm going to need you to transfer $3,000 a week. You get your partner, because it's a partnership, to transfer X amount of money to you on a schedule where you never have to ask him for money. And the boundary is, I need to feel financially secure while we figure this out. I need that $500 in Monday morning at 8 a.m. or I am going to approach a divorce attorney or a divorce mediator, and I'm going to get paperwork going that says that very thing, that you have to transfer money to me. Now, that's not a threat. I'm going to divorce you. You need to leave, yada, yada, yada. That is, and this is what I encourage you to realize. You need to figure out what your need is. Your need is to feel financially secure. So the problem is, I don't have any money. How do I solve this without any money? The need is, I need financial security. The solution is you create options for it, and you get your own job so you know you're making your own money, and you set up a transfer. And that is going to make you feel 1,000,000% better, because there's so much more work to do. That's not even step one.
Yeah. I can hear past clients in my ears right now, and they're saying, but I'm a stay-at-home mom and I don't have time for a job. And I like how you really just answered that. I wanted to say it earlier, but it does come down to, you're going to get this money if you get a divorce.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but if you're a stay-at-home mom, I just wanted to share this, and you get divorced, your children now are going to be with their dad 2 to 3 days a week, which means you would have 2 to 3 days a week to work.
Yep.
So instead of getting divorced, you tell your husband, I'm going to need you to watch the kids Tuesday and Thursday evenings and all day Saturday, because I'm going to be at my new job.
Yeah. So this is the beauty of having a coach, right? Like you're listing out some great options, but this is why you hire a coach, and you don't just try to do this on your own, especially if you're the person that feels stuck because you don't have any friends to talk to. And this is really hard to talk to your friends, and you might not really get great advice. You're going to get advice from somebody else that is probably gone through the ringer themselves.
Totally.
And
And having a coach, you can take these steps each week. And
yes,
the next week you come back and we go, okay, what happened in the last week? Did you apply for jobs? And these are boundaries. These are like you set a boundary with yourself. You go, you know what? I need a job by next week. And having a coach, and I have a coach, I always have a coach. And my coach gave me homework last week. I literally was doing it. It's embarrassing to say, but I need to hire someone else for my business. And I've been saying it for weeks, and I meet him every other week. And I literally put the ad on Indeed like 5 minutes before my coaching session. But I could show up to my coaching session and he's like, did you put that ad on Indeed? Yes, sir. Yes, I did.
sure did, right? You don't need to know when.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Check.
it holds you accountable. It does. And it helps you to get some new perspective and new ideas when you're feeling stuck. Yeah. I have a
And when you
coach,
and
everyone's
yeah,
supposed to.
exactly. And when you go, I can't do that, your coach goes, but you can. And the reality is, if you're going to go down the other spiral, if you're going to go down the, if you get to your threshold and you're like, I'm just leaving, I'm getting divorced. That's the rock bottom. So I really encourage people. This is an exercise in our program, and I'm going to give you a tiny little peek into it without going through all the details of it. Figure out what the very worst thing that can happen to you in this, your absolute worst case scenario in this situation, and then build from there. Realize, if I'm going to have that, if I'm going to go there, then I can do all this. I can get a job because that one's so much worse. I can ask my husband to watch the kids two nights a week. He's not going to want to, but he's going to have to, because he's going to have to in the new world anyways. So
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. Okay. I cut you off. So go back to what you were saying. It was get a job.
what was yeah, so okay, so that is gaining your strength and your validation from within. So if I can springboard into codependency, because I know people don't like to hear about this, and I know when I learned about it, because I'm a recovering codependent myself, I learned, I just visited my parents who are struggling because of their codependency. My dad's 82 and he asked my mom to move out. Actually, he didn't ask her, he told her last Saturday, you need to move out. So I flew there to attempt, but it didn't exactly work. But that's a story for a different day. But like, why did he do that? Because they don't have boundaries. Their self images are blurred. And he lost his a long time ago, and she tries to control his, and he's sick of it because he's 82. So my point about that is, I'm programmed like that. When I realized I was programmed like that, I'm like, oh my gosh. And somebody told me that I was programmed like that. And guess what happened when they told me that I was programmed like that? I was mad. I'm like, you're wrong and I'm right. and that's not true. But I went home going, hmm, maybe that is true. Maybe this really great magnetic feeling that I have is not good for me, because maybe it's going to turn on me. And then I did tons of research on codependency. And so what I want to tell you is, if your partner's your only friend and you are absolutely 100% dependent upon that person for all your validation, and you for him, or maybe not, but that is too many eggs in one basket, and those eggs need to be spread out. And when you get a coach, your coach becomes, yes, you have to pay the person, but it becomes the emotionally mature person in your life who can tell you the things you need to hear. It might be the only emotionally mature person. Your coach will help you develop healthy friendships. And now you'll have an actual, group of people. If you join group coaching, you automatically have people who are on the same journey, that are in the same position, and you can engage with. But the goal of taking your codependent relationship is to learn about what your dynamics are that contribute to it. Being able to see them, which you can't usually see yourself. Somebody else has to point them out. And it's wild because you can't see them. But once you see them, if you're willing to, You can never not see them, which means you get to work on them in a beautiful way. But the goal is to take your codependent relationship and make it interdependent. And interdependent means you feel strong and healthy and whole. You're validating yourself through your job and through your volunteer work and through your hobbies. And you're feeling all strong, which means now you can be next to your partner in crime. And your partner in crime has to do the same thing. They have to validate themselves from inside. Anybody who's acting out sexually or going to porn, it's because they're looking for validation from external. They don't have self-validation. They're looking for external validation to feel okay. So your man has to heal that. You heal yours, and now you're in this strong relationship. And just to point out one thing, and I know we've talked about it before, is that the opposite of a codependent relationship is a disengaged one. So if you're listening and go, that's not me at all. My husband and I, we barely talk about anything real. That's on the opposite side, where you're so independent, you can't be vulnerable with each other. And it creates a lot of the same issues. Interdependency, two partners in crime, next to each other, walking strongly, not one person leading, the other following, and that kind of going back and forth. That's why we talk about codependency, because I want you to look for your patterns. I want you to see them, because again, it is part of the problem. Your attachment and your dynamics is part of the problem. It has to be healed. So it's a problem, which means it's part of the solution.
Very well said. Absolutely. Well, man, this is, like I started off saying, this is going to be a heavy episode. This one is, I think, hard to hear, but hopefully comforting that we.
Yeah. And if I can just share one, I have two more things written down to share, is that, and I know this is part of my journey. So, again, oversharing or hopefully sharing so that it makes sense, is that a lot of the behaviors that we have within our relationships, we learned in childhood. They were our coping mechanisms to make us feel safe. So what happens is they were very adaptive when we were young, but they become maladaptive as we get older. And I'll give one example from my own life. And again, it can look different for different people, but I grew up in a family where if there was a problem, everybody ignored it. They still do, by the way. Everybody ignored it, and you just didn't talk about it. You pretended it didn't exist. And that became, I had a very positive outlook on my life because there was no conflict, and I learned to create no conflict. And this is what the person said to me too, that I have toxic positivity. And they didn't use the word toxic, but I'm like, it's not toxic. Like, I actually think everything's going to work out, but I trained myself to actually think everything's going to work out. And so some people call that toxic positivity, but like what I've learned about it is that I'm misgrading things. So all these really bad things that happened to me across my life, I learned to excuse them because nobody else cared around me. And so I'm like, nobody else cares. So really, this feels like a big deal to me, but nobody else does. So, but honestly, I grew out of that across my, probably when I was 18, I started to be like, I know everybody's ignoring this, but this is not cool. And they still ignore stuff. And I'm still like, why can't you people? So like, I learned not to have conflict. So in my relationship, whenever something makes me mad, or I know I have a problem in my relationship, I have to teach myself. And it's hard every time. And that's why I feel you. If you don't want to hear this, I feel you, because I still have to. And I'm way ahead of the journey than a lot of people. I have to go, I got to go approach the hubs on this one. And, an example, here's another example, and he'll kill me later if he ever hears these, which he probably won't, is that last week, my son Seamus came out of his room, and he had my husband's chiropractor, and my son was like all hunched over, and he had bad posture, and he's like eating his food like a caveman. He's 15, like whatever. Like, so he was eating food like with no fork. And my husband just started in on him 10 seconds into, he comes around, sits down, comment about his posture, comment about his food. He made a bunch more comments. So I'm sitting there going, oh my God, how awful is that? Like, and Seamus likes to be in his room. He doesn't like to come out of his room. So my husband comes back in the living room, and I go, hey babe, can I talk to you in the bedroom? I'm sure he thinks he's in trouble. So that's a dynamic that's created too. Because if you talk to your man about the stuff, they feel in trouble. So he has to get over that crap. So we go in the room, and I said, did you just make a bunch of negative comments to Shay in the first seconds that he came out of his room? And he's like, I did. Because he's on this journey too. He's always constantly trying to be better at this. And I said, if you did that to me, I wouldn't want to walk into a room and see you. And my husband's like, okay. And so my husband went back into the kitchen, made a bunch of positive comments, and like kind of did a redo. And so like that, and of course my husband doesn't want to hear it from me, but at the same time, we're getting used to it. He did a thing to me too, because I was feeling overwhelmed. And I said, I forget what I said, but my husband got a little annoyed with me. And then I got annoyed. And then I came back and I said, no, he did, which was really cute because he is doing a lot of work. He's like, can I talk to you about the thing that just happened? I'm like, sure. And I'm still working through it because he called me out of my crap, basically.
Yeah.
And he's like, the only reason I said that is because, you've been saying that a lot lately. I've basically been saying, like, I have too much to do. I don't have time to do anything. So and this is the thing for me. This is one of my negative things. And so I said, you're right. You're right. And I am going to solve it. And I'm not going to keep saying it because it only makes things worse. Thank you for calling me out on that. But you have to have emotional maturity to be able to do this, and you have to be able to move towards conflict. But the thing is, if you do it well, it only creates conflict for, at this stage in your journey, it might create conflict for a long time, but it's going to be worth it. But in the end, you learn the skill of approaching, and conflict doesn't have to be a negative word. It can be a positive thing, because if there's no conflict, like in my life, no conflicts means we just pretend everything's rosy, but everything sucks. But if I can actually engage with conflict in a healthy way, not with threats, with boundaries, then we can move through it and we're stronger.
Yeah.
And so and just one more thing is that I'm reading the Will Smith book. Did you read it? Have you read it?
No.
Oh my, do you read? Do you like to
I love
read? I encourage anybody listening to download the audio if you have Audible. Will Smith's new book, it's called Will. It's actually written by Mark Manson, who has written a couple of books. They wrote it together. Amazing book that talks about everything that you all need to hear and your partners need to hear. And he's very vulnerable, shares about his life. And Jada Pinkett Smith is a sex addict. So he's living the partner's life. And he talks about all the things that he talks about from that typically happen to women, and to a certain extent has happened to him because of the dynamics of his childhood. Mind blowing. But in one of the chapters, he talks about this Buddhist proverb where a guy's on the side of the river and he is going to die because people are coming to get him or whatever. I forget it exactly, but there's a raft there. So he gets on the raft and he goes across the river, and he's saved from the danger that was coming. So, and then it's this heavily treed forest that he has to keep going. So he puts a raft on his back because it just saved his life. And he starts trucking through the forest, but he can't make it through because the raft is too big and he can't get through the trees. But he doesn't want to let the raft go because it saved his life. And in the book, he says, the thing that saved you when you were young, and he tells a story from his life, is the thing that can take you down if you can't drop it. And he was talking about anger and perceiving violence. I'm always talking about spider senses. His spider senses kept tingling that there was violence because he grew up in a violent home long after the violence was gone. So he'd misgrade interactions as violent ones, and it created problems for him. And he's like, I had to let the raft go. And that's taking an adaptive behavior from when you were younger. And you might need some adaptive behaviors to get through this journey. But when you get to the other side of it, you have to be able to learn when it's time to drop that. And so for me, misgrading things and not having conflict in my life, that had to be dropped. But I had to learn how to go towards conflict in a healthy way, to set boundaries and say, this is what I'm doing, this for our relationship. And if my relationship's going to make it, you got to join me in this journey. And, thankfully, my husband is trying to join me in the journey of emotional regulation so we can be better parents and change generational stuff for ourselves so that we can move forward because we dropped the raft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this is wonderful information. And, that's something that I try really hard to do, is just be real and share the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Because, nobody has it all together. We're just in different stages of healing and emotional maturity. And, to me, that is the only way that you're going to be able to make it through this and heal. So, this was a lot. I would encourage you to rewatch or re-listen or watch.
Yeah, and
Again,
there
it's
is no judgment from this girl because I've been in
yeah,
your shoes. I literally don't have any, I am not judging you. I just want you to move through these stages
yeah,
faster instead of slower because it's so painful. The slower you go through them, you just stay in pain and you stay stuck between a rock and a hard place. And it breaks my heart. And, it's me trying to shake you a little and go, sister, you got this. You got this, girlfriend. Like, I know you don't think you got this, but we are literally here for you if you want us. We're here for you in this free content if you can't join us. But if you want the tools that you need and the support that you need, and that's what science shows, you need the right tools and the right support. You get yourself financially secure through your partner and through employment, feel safe, and then get the right help. And if it's not us, get someone that you feel like you can trust to move you through this faster instead of slower, because you deserve to get to the other side of this, no matter what it looks like. And this is me giving you a little shake, and it comes with a hug. It's like a shake and a hug. We got you, but no judgment.
awesome. We're good.
All right. So until next time, hopefully that will help you out. And if you're looking for help on this journey, go to our website, sanityafterbetrayal.com. If you're listening to us on the podcast, we also have videos on YouTube. And I know our YouTube channel is growing, which is really exciting. So if you need support, we're here for you. Reach out. All right. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.